Welcome back to the OP Podcast. I'm your host, Fono Vakalahi, back with another message/lesson on important character qualities that you'll need in order to live a successful and fulfilling life. Before I get into that, I just want to give a huge shout out to Realize Food Company. Realize Food Company is just a company that I wanted to shout out that I thought was doing a good thing. And not only, the whole purpose of the podcast is to help people prepare for overcoming tragedies or overcoming obstacles and challenges in your life. Well, I'm going to highlight this company here, and I thought it just went well with the theme. Realize Food Company is a ready, prepared food storage company. You can order supplies, dry foods, anything you can think of. You could even come to readyproject.com and you could figure out monthly food storage. They even have a food storage calculator, depending on how many people are in your family. You can break it down. They make it easy for you. You could also find them on Facebook at Realize Food, right? You could stay up to date with all the latest news and all the latest, greatest things that Realize Food Company is putting out there. But just wanted to take a quick spotlight moment to highlight Realize Food Company and just help you know that there is companies out there that will not only help you prepare for the future, but also help you break it down and make it a lot easier for you. I've tried some of their stuff and it's honestly not too bad. A lot of times with dry foods and dry anything, emergency preparedness food, I've had a couple that I've made in Boy Scouts when I was younger, and it just wasn't really good. But theirs actually tastes like real food. So you want to check them out for all of your food storage needs. Realize Food Company. But like I said, I have a special message for you today. It's a lesson on important character qualities that all of us should obtain and really know about and learn about in order to live a successful and fulfilling life. You notice it's not only successful, but nothing is for me is really successful unless it's fulfilling. And so these character qualities that I'm going to be going over, there's 6 of them, and I'm only going to be covering 2 today. Okay, so there's 6 character qualities, and I'm just going to name them off. It's gratitude, attitude, ambition, courage, wisdom, humor, and integrity. So that's actually 7. Apologize. Lucky number 7. So gratitude, attitude, ambition, courage, wisdom, humor, and integrity. So there's 7 important character qualities that I want to go over with you guys and kind of break down and share some personal experiences from them. All right. So to get this thing started, I created a little presentation for you, and we're going to follow along in that presentation. I'm going to go ahead and get that set up here. All right. Okay. Now, like I said, I'm only going to be covering 2. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot to talk about. So today I'm only going to be covering 2. Here we go. If you notice, there's a little logo on the bottom left-hand corner. That is the Fono Vakalahi Foundation logo, the official Fono Vakalahi Foundation logo. Before I get into the lesson, I want to talk a little bit about that and the design of the logo. So obviously the FV is initials for my first and last name, Fono Vakalahi, and the V is in a shape of doves, right? And if you ever study doves or geese or even ducks, a lot of times you'll see them flying in a V shape. Now the purpose of the V shape is to help not only with wind resistance, but also is to work together as a team, right? And the person who's in the very back is going to be the person resting while the rest of the team carries them. But when the person is in the very back, their next position is in the very front. And again, they're in the front, powering through, leading the pack, taking on most of the wind resistance, and then they slowly work their way back, one after the other, as you can see. And the further back they go, the more rest that they get. But it's only successful traveling long-term in this V formation if everyone is doing their job, right? And so for me, the whole logo of the PhonoV Foundation is really geared around the fact that it takes all of us, right? It takes all of us for any one of us to be successful. I'm going to say that again. It takes all of us in order for any one of us to be successful. And so hopefully, as you join along in the journey and as you're learning some of these lessons that I'm giving, that you not only listen and apply this in your life, but also that you share it with someone that you know, or share it and apply it with a kid or a family member or someone that you just know needs to hear this thing. Another great way to share it with these family members is just sending them a link to this YouTube page, having them subscribe to the YouTube page, the OP podcast, and also following my Instagram page at the OP_podcast, and just stay up to date with everything. Like I said, the whole purpose of this entire project is to help mentor, help share lessons that I've learned along the way that has helped me overcome some of the life challenges. And so welcome to the PhonoV Foundation. Just wanted to introduce that as well. But off to the lesson. Today's lesson is important character qualities to have in order to live a successful and fulfilled life. Right? It's one thing to be successful, but it's another thing to be fulfilled, right, in life. You see a lot of people who make a lot of money, but just aren't fulfilled. They make a lot of money, they're not happy. They make a lot of money, they're just depressed or sad or upset or short-tempered, because money is not what makes you successful. It's the act of achieving something, right? It's the act of achieving something is what makes you successful. It's what creates success, right? And if your success is not geared towards something that is fulfilling for you, then really you're just working for paper and monetary success and monetary happiness. And it's not something that's going to last you a lifetime. When you find yourself engaged in something that is fulfilling, the success is just that much sweeter. It's just that much greater because you know it's going towards a greater cause. And that's the whole reason why I'm starting this thing. And that's the whole reason why I have the PhonoV Foundation, and the whole reason why I'm here giving these lessons, sharing my experiences with the audience on my own dime, on my own time. I don't expect anything back. But one thing that just to kind of help you understand, the whole reason why I do this is also because of the experience that I had of losing my father at a young age, at an important age of life where I really needed him in my early teens, right? That mentorship in my early teens to help me, navigate this crazy world that we live in, right? But a lot of that stuff, I had to learn on my own, trial and error, right? I always wondered why I had to learn things the hard way. Well, I feel like part of it was because I didn't have that proper mentorship. I had it with my older brothers and whatnot, but I just didn't really have that father figure title because my father passed away at a young age. So one thing that I wanted to prepare my kids for, and anyone else that is willing to listen, is if you don't have that mentorship, I'm here for you, right? I'm here for you because I know what it feels like to be roaming alone, right? I know what it feels like to be in a life where you feel like you have no one to turn to and you just want a little bit of guidance. That's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to give you guidance from experiences from my own life, from guest speakers, and from lessons that I've learned. And it's all free. All you have to do is subscribe to the YouTube page and share it, right, to people that you know that need to hear this type of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to jump into it. Important character qualities to have in order to live a successful and fulfilled life. Okay, number one, gratitude, right? We all hear gratitude. Now, to be thankful, in order for us to get more, right? Start with the quote. In order for us to get more, we need to be thankful for what we have. How many times do you hear, growing up, your parents say, "Gosh, you're so ungrateful." right? Or you might hear a parent say to their child, after they say, okay, we're going to have McDonald's for dinner, and they start complaining, right? And it's like, gosh, why are you so ungrateful, right? A lot of times kids, I feel like, really just don't understand how blessed they are and what to be grateful for, because this is just part of their life. And for me, growing up, right, I didn't really understand the challenges and the struggles that my parents had to go through, right, in order to give us what we had, right? Growing up, I came from humble beginnings, and they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, if you know any Polynesian family, there's cousins, and every brothers and sisters, everyone is cousins, because we're big, or one of our core values in our culture is family, right? And living on the islands, a lot of people had to work together in order to support each other to survive. And so gratitude, being thankful, right? Being thankful. Turn cynicism into thanksgiving. One thing that blocks the flow of good ideas is cynicism, right? And when I first heard about cynicism, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't really know what cynicism meant, right? So I did some research, and long story short, cynicism came from the root word cynic, and this is what they used to call people back in the day, who just lived like a carefree life, right? Carefree life meaning they didn't care about what society was doing. They didn't care about the being politically correct. They didn't care about anything that is normal in normal day-to-day society, right? And they compared these cynics to dogs, right? If you think of a dog is just carefree, right? And if you've ever heard any stories, I've heard stories about dogs in the islands, right? These dogs just roam. They just roam. They just live their life. They eat, they wake up every day and they find their meal, and they don't have anyone to answer to. They just roam, and they just live their lives every day to survive, and they're happy with it. It's a chosen lifestyle that they decide to live, right? So one thing that blocks the flow of all good ideas is cynicism, right? Turn cynicism into thanksgiving, right? Instead of just living your life, and I honestly used to live in a way that, I just didn't care what anyone else thought, right? I just didn't care what anyone else felt or how they felt about me and the way I was living, right? And I put up this huge wall, right? This wall, because of the experiences that I've gone through, right? The experience that I went through. I had this huge wall, and I talked about this in a previous podcast, right? But that same wall that blocks out all hurt, right? All the feeling of the experiences of hurt and pain is the same wall that blocks out new opportunities, right? And so turning cynicism into thanksgiving, instead of just living carefree, being thankful for what you have. In order for us to get more, we must first be thankful for what you already have, right? So that's definitely an important key character quality that everyone must obtain, is to first be grateful, be thankful, have a heart of thanksgiving. So that's the first one. The next one, and this one is a breakdown, and this is what's going to take the most time. The remainder of our time is attitude, right? This is something that I talk to my kids about, my oldest especially, is, if only he had a good attitude, you'd probably see things a little bit differently. You see in the movies a lot where, a guy walks through his city block, and, everything is just kind of gray, gloomy. It's raining, just the scenario and the feel, the vibe is just gray and, gloomy. And, he ends up going to work, and he either gets a promotion, right? He gets the promotion that he's been waiting for, that he thought he'd never get, right? And on his way home, he's walking through the same climate, but all of a sudden, the rain is something to be happy about, right? The people that he's walking by is he's sharing his happy vibes with these people that he's walking by, and in turn helping them be happy and feel joy, right? And so it's just the only difference between his way to work and his way home from work was his attitude, right? The climate was the same. It was still raining outside. It was still raining outside. People, were still there, right? But the only difference between his his experience on his way to work from his experience on the way home from work was his attitude, right? If only we had the how you feel, the attitude, how you feel first, right? First of all, we're affected by what we know. Okay, we're affected by what we know, and second, we're more affected by how we feel about what we know. So not only what we know, but how we feel about what we know. That makes a big difference, right? A big portion of our life is affected by how we feel. Here's a quick list. I'm going to be going over a quick list about the feelings that affect our lives. Okay. How you feel about the past is number one. Quote, allow the past to be a teacher, not a burden. This is something that I had to learn, and unfortunately, I didn't learn until my later 20s. Imagine if I would have learned this lesson in my teens, right? Which I'm sure a lot of people have, or maybe even younger, where they've learned that allow the past to be a teacher and not a burden, right? Now, what does that really mean? What does it mean to allow the past to be a teacher and not a burden, right? Again, attitude. This is number one, key principle. Number one is on attitude is how you feel about the past. Okay. One thing to note here is you don't have to be a victim of your past, right? You don't have to be a victim of your past. You don't have to be your past. The cool thing about the present and the future is that you have full control over how you want to shape your life in order to create your future, right? If all you do is believe that the past is who you are because I've either gone to jail or I've in and out of prison, right? That there's no future for me. Like future is prison. Or if you feel like you're just not a good kid, right? Mom always says I'm not listening, right? I keep making the same mistakes, right? Moms keep talking to me about the same thing over and over, right? And then suddenly, if you allow the past to be who you are, you start saying things like, well, there's no point of me, even trying. There's no point for me to even try. There is no point for me to even try to change. Because this is who I am. My brother's like this. My dad's like this. My grandpa grew up like this. And so, of course, I'm going to be like this. Of course, I'm going to be in and out of jail, or of course, I'm going to have bad teeth for the rest of my life because this is what the past was. This is how my brothers are. This is how my dad's teeth were. This is how my grandfather's teeth were. It's genetic. It's genetic. One thing I want you to get out of your head right now is that it's not genetic. Habits can be passed down from generation to generation, and that's probably why you're in the same situation as your father or your grandfather or whatever. But the cool thing to know about it is these are all learned habits of the past. All you have to do is change your habit. right? All you have to do is change your circumstances, right? And that all depends on how you feel about the past. If you feel like the past is just who I am, because my dad's like this, my grandfather's like this, then this is who I am. This is who I'm supposed to be, because I have no other choice than to be this person. Well, you're wrong. I'll tell you that right now, is you're 100% wrong. And this is, like I said, this is something that I learned in my mid-20s. Like, I've heard it all my life, but I didn't really understand it until my mid-20s, because I had to try to figure it out. I had to try to figure it out because I was stubborn, and I had that wall up that was keeping out all the pain and disappointment, from when my father passed away, when my mom had a stroke. I put this wall up so that I couldn't feel anything. Right? And finally, when I took that wall down, I started to grow. I started to learn from my experiences. Right? But until you take that wall down, you can't start the process to progress. So I challenge you to take that wall down and start overcoming some of the feelings of the past, right? Looking at the past for what it is and not letting the past determine who you are. Okay? And that's what it means to allow the past to be a teacher and not a burden. Okay? Learn from the past. Learn from past generations. Learn from your past mistakes. And if you think changing it is going to happen overnight, well, you're wrong. Great things take time. Great things take time. Great things take effort. And if you truly want to change the past, and if you want a better future, you better put in that work. You better put in that work. Okay? Otherwise, nothing will change. In order for your circumstances to change, you have to change. Understand? Okay. On to the next one. Number 2, how you feel about the future. Okay. Our life is affected by 2 major things. One is price and the other is promise. Okay. Quote is, it's not easy to pay the price if you can't see the promise. I'm going to use the example of working out, right? A lot of people want to lose weight. I was on that boat, and I was on that boat, I was off that boat, on that boat and off that boat, back and forth, probably 1,000 times, until I really understood what it really took to be successful, right? Until I really understood the promise. And it's going to be hard for us to pay the price when it's unclear of what the promise will be. Okay. Now, going back to working out, right? You probably know some people like this. Maybe you're like this. Like I said, I was like this. When working out, for a couple weeks, I, sometimes I started and it went 2 weeks. And then I slacked off, and then I went another month, then I slacked off, and I went like 5 months, and then I slacked off. But really understanding that the process takes time, and the promise is there, right? But the only difference in me receiving the promise is me not being willing to pay the promise, or to pay the price, right? The only difference between me receiving the promise that I've set out to get, and all those times that I've tried to lose weight over and over and over and over and over again, was I wasn't willing to pay the price. I wasn't willing to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I was not willing to get out of bed when I was just comfy and just didn't want to get out of bed. I was not willing to go 110% during my time at the gym when I was at the gym. I wasn't willing to make sure that I was eating the right foods, right, to pay the price to get the promise. But until I really started to understand the concept of paying the price, until I really understand that, and until I really started paying the price, it was when I was paying the price is when I was starting to see the promise. And in fitness and in weight loss, your weight loss journey, you always taught, I always say it's not a race, it's a marathon. It takes time. It takes time. At my heaviest point 2 years ago, I was 440 pounds. 440 pounds. Like, I cannot even believe that I was at this point, right? I was 440 pounds 2 years ago. And I was just like, enough is enough, right? Like, do I really want to be rolling around the house to do things? Do I really want to not have the energy to be there for my kids? Do I really want to not be there to support or protect my family when I really need it to, right? Do I really want it to be that guy? And I was just so disgusted with myself, which is a point that you have to get to. And I'll go over that in a later lesson. In order for you to really make a change, and it takes consistency, right? Relentless consistency in order for you to really, really get the promise. Consistency and paying the price, right? Like I said, 2 years ago, I was 440 pounds. Today, I'm 338 pounds. This is the first time I've been in 330s. And again, that's still a lot of weight, but it's a huge accomplishment for me. The last time I was in my 330s is when I was playing football at BYU. Freshman year, I walked in as one of the heaviest linemen at 330. This is a little over 12 years ago that I'm talking about, since I've been in the 330s. But again, it takes consistency and how you feel about the future, right? How do you feel about your future? Okay. It's not easy to pay the price if you can't see the promise. Okay. It's not easy to pay the price if you can't see the promise, but you have to know and be committed to the promise and continually, consistently, relentlessly paying the price each and every day to get the promise. How you feel about the future. Next one, how you feel about each other, right? How do you feel about the people around you? How do you feel about, the government, your attitude towards society, your country, your state, your city, your community, your family, enterprise, office, company that you work for? How do you feel about the people around you? How do you feel about each other, right? It's so important to have a unique understanding of other human beings and what makes a good life, right? What makes a good life? If all you're doing is living in your box, yeah, your life is going to be the greatest because you have nothing to compare it to. Not saying that you have to go out there and compare yourselves to others, right? But as far as the happiness that can be attained in your life can be gained by experiencing others and seeing how others live and seeing the happiness that comes when other people do certain things, right? This is what I'm talking about, right? What constitutes a good life, right? That's all comes from our experiences and how we feel about each other. You can't succeed by yourself, right? In this great nation that we live in, the United States of America, right? When our forefathers wrote the Pledge of Allegiance, I think it was done. I think they were inspired by a greater power to write that, right? The Pledge of Allegiance starts with I and ends with all, right? It starts with I, taking personal accountability, personal responsibility for who I am and what I do, right? In order for the all of us to be successful, the I of us has to do their part. right? It takes all of us. The quote says, it takes all of us for any one of us to be successful. And a unique defined appreciation of the all of us is what makes the I of us do better, right? Is how we feel about each other, how we feel about our neighbors, right? How you feel about each other. Super important. How you feel about yourself. Right? This is the last one that I wanted to cover today. And again, this is 2 of the 7 characters, key characters that you should obtain in order to live a successful and fulfilled life. But on attitude, key principle number 4 is how you feel about yourself. Understanding self-worth is the beginning of progress. Understanding who you are is the beginning of progress. Understanding where you are is the beginning of progress. Understanding how far you've come is the beginning of progress. Understanding where you've come from is the beginning of progress. Understanding yourself. How do you feel about yourself? Right? How do you feel about yourself? And one thing I want you to realize that you should be feeling about yourself is that you're a special human being that can overcome anything and that could obtain and accomplish some of the greatest things in this world. Right? The difference between you and Einstein, Albert Einstein, is relentless consistency, is believing in himself when no one else believed in him, when everyone else thought he was crazy. He understood who he was, and he understood his mission, and he understood how he felt about himself. And it didn't matter what anyone else said. It didn't matter what anyone else felt about him, right? Another great philosopher that I wanted to bring up, right, is gosh, I can't think of him. I totally forgot because I wasn't planning on talking about this, right? But okay, this is going to bug me a little bit. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm not gonna get into that, but it's gonna bug me. And I'm gonna bring it back on another podcast, who this philosopher was, that I wanted to talk about. But he was the philosopher, one of the first philosophers that Western the Western philosophy, modern Western philosophy is kind of catered after. And some of you, please comment below, because I'll think of it as soon as I finish this podcast and be like, dang it, I wish I would have thought of that. But this philosopher, right, believed in himself, and he understood himself, and he was one of the greatest philosophers alive. And he ended up drinking a cup of poison, right? He was so good at what he did, and he understood himself so well that people from all of Rome just came and sent their kids to learn from him. But then there came a point, because as philosopher, one of his key things was curiosity, and was to question things, right? And the way that he helped people understand, and the way that he battled with people on what they really knew, and the wisdom that they really had, was he asked them questions to really get out of them that they really didn't know what they were talking about, right? But there came a point to where this philosopher, who still is a blank in my mind, and I can't believe that I can't think of him, but there came a point to where the higher up says, you know what, like, you've really just kind of ruined our kids' lives, and we're going to sentence you to death because you're just not doing a good thing, right? And they gave an ultimatum. He said, you can either drink this cup of poison and die, which I know for those of you who know who this philosopher is, please comment below because you know exactly who I'm talking about. Or in order for you to live, you must deny everything that you've been teaching and everything that this philosophy, the wisdom that you've been spreading to, all of Rome and to our kids. You must deny it. If you deny everything that you've been teaching, you can live. But this philosopher decided to drink the cup of poison because he understood himself, right? And he understood that if he denied everything that he taught and who he was, that would do more damage to everything that he lived for than it would be for him to live and deny everything that he taught. Again, I know you know who this philosopher is, and maybe this was a pop quiz. Comment below on who this philosopher was so that I could just smack myself in the head once I remember who it is and be like, oh my gosh, how did I forget? But again, I wasn't prepared to go over this one and talk about this philosopher, and that's why I can't think of him right now because I'm so focused. We'll just use that as the excuse. But understanding, how you feel about yourself is the last one, right? Understanding how you feel about yourself, right? I want you to ask a couple questions, okay? And this is we're going to end our podcast on this note, right? How valuable are you? What can I do if I had all the skills? What can I become in terms of value? Am I valuable enough? Okay, this is the great question. Am I valuable enough to work on what is still not functioning in my life to full capacity? Okay, how valuable are you? What could you do if you had all the skills? And what can I become in terms of value? And then last but not least, am I valuable enough to work on all that is on all what is still not functioning in my life to full capacity? I know I still have a lot to learn, and I have a lot in my life that is not functioning to full capacity. And I know that I'm valuable enough to do the work, to try to figure it out, to get functioning at full capacity, right? And to answer this first question, how valuable are you? Again, it's not about your past. You are not your past. Okay. Human beings are capable of accomplishing some of the greatest things in this world. One thing that you have to tell yourself and remind yourself right now is that you were placed in this earth for a purpose. You're here for a reason. Okay. And you have all the skills that you need in order to be successful, right? You have all the tools and resources that you need in order to be successful, right? And I want to leave you with these things. These two, again, we only covered 2 of the 7 of these character values, right? These important character values and characteristics that you need in order to be truly successful. Okay. Hopefully you enjoyed today's podcast. Again, this is going to be a 4-part series where we're going to take 2 character values each time, and we'll drop them as we go. But this is Fono Vakalahi. I am the founder and owner of the OP Podcast, here for you, here to help you, here to mentor you, here to share with you some of the life experiences and some of the things that I've learned along the way to help you, right, spring forward into accomplishing some of life's greatest things, right? Hopefully you enjoyed this. Again, you can follow me on Instagram at @the_OP_podcast. You could also subscribe to my YouTube page at the OP Podcast. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Even if you don't think they need it, trust me, someone needs to hear it, or they know someone who needs to hear it. Help spread the word, spread the good news, and spread your smile. Have a good night.